This is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and Tim Hankewich joins us for the final time for the epic 95th season of Orchestra Iowa.
Yes, parting is such sweet sorrow.
Yeah.
This is the final end of our season, and it's been a great season, but all good things must come to an end.
You say that with a remarkably straight face for a guy who is ready to go travel and have some fun for a few weeks.
I'm looking forward to a tan. Yeah, without a doubt.
But it's an epic season.
Yes.
Epic Bach
is
the name of the final concert coming up this weekend.
Right. So, Dennis, let me tell you a story about this piece. So, in 1989, I was dating this gorgeous young woman who was later to become my wife. And when I graduated from my undergrad as a piano major, she gave me, as a gift, a hardbound copy of the Bach B minor Mass. That's because she knew how much I revered Bach. She knew in particular how much I revered that particular piece. So fast forward 28 years to this weekend. As finally I get a chance to actually perform
So
that
you've
piece.
never had a chance to conduct this before?
No. And you were also joking about the upcoming summer. Well, my last summer, all 3 months were dedicated to the study and the preparation of this piece. So this has been a pretty big deal for me personally. And, and the one thing I admire about the music of Bach, I am agnostic, close to an atheist. And yet when I hear his music, sing his music, study his music, I reconsider my position because this music is the perfect union between the spiritual, the musical, the intellectual, the craftsmanship, the genius. It is perfect music. And this is something that I've waited a very long time to do, and it means a great deal for me to get a chance to perform this work after 28 years.
Wow. Now, just in the historical perspective, of course, Bach is revered as perhaps the greatest composer of all time.
Yep.
But at the time, wasn't he just more or less a church musician?
Yeah.
If that?
Yeah, he was probably the most overlooked musician of all time, possibly because his music, even to today, is incredibly complex. The music sort of just washes over you, often leaving people puzzled. To really understand the music of Bach, you have to listen to it 10, 12, 20 times before it really starts seeping in. And this particular work, he wrote it in the last 2 years of his life, but it was actually 40 years in the making. One of the movements he started as early as 40 years earlier and then set it aside. And then in the 1730s, some 20 years before he died, he started writing it. And for the remainder of his life, up until his death, he was adding to this work, not really intending it to be entirely performed. This was a work of posterity. And so in many ways, musically, it is his last will and testament.
Talking with Tim Hankewich from Orchestra Iowa about Epic Bach, the final concert in the season for Orchestra Iowa. But it is also a choral work, yes?
It is one of the most difficult of choral works. That's one of the reasons why it's rarely performed. And Chorale Midwest, under the direction of Dr. Bradley Barrett, will be joining us on stage. For those of you who have actually sung Bach before, it is both some of the most challenging and yet the most satisfying vocally to sing. And that is his music in general. You can times that by a factor of 10 when it comes to this work. It is brutally difficult for the choir, but at the same time, it's also one of the most amazing vocal victories a chorister can go through.
So in a sense, you've probably been, we've talked about the evolution of the orchestra over the last few years. So this is probably something that's been some years in the making for you too, getting an orchestra to the point where this was performable.
Right. And so some of the things, when you do early music, we'll call it early music, Baroque music, you can get mired into endless minutia and detail. Like I said earlier, when I spent my entire summer last year, I spent marking every note with an articulation and a dynamic so that it doesn't overbalance the chorus, and yet at the same time, the rhythms and the articulations that the orchestra play are intended to mimic the articulations and the vocal cadences of the speech. So when someone says Kyrie, you hear that strong weak, and so that the musicians are actually playing the articulation of the text with their instruments. So it was a never-ending spiral into minutia, such that when the orchestra sits down and has that in front of them, they'll play it just like that. Because after all these years, I've assembled an orchestra that. Well, it's no secret to audiences around here how proud I am of the orchestra, but this is literally something that was impossible 10 years ago.
You've really put the orchestra through its paces.
I have
this season. Every work has been has been a challenge.
You feed musicians great music, challenging music, and you always keep it right at the top of their abilities, and the orchestra will grow and respond. Difficulty for a music director is sometimes choosing music that may be above them, and so it doesn't bear the fruit that you want. The real challenge for an orchestral director like myself in the last 10 years is to always challenge them with music that's just within their reach. And after 10 years, it has borne fruit that now there is nothing in the repertoire that this orchestra can't do convincingly.
You talk about how difficult this piece is. Do you get, but your rehearsal schedule is the same.
Right.
So you get the same amount of time with the orchestra that you would for any other concert. So I'm sure that this has required some extra preparation on their part as well.
Certainly on the chorus part, the chorus. They've been working at this for a couple months now. But the other thing about the better the orchestra, the less rehearsal that you need, but the less rehearsals that you have, the higher stakes those rehearsals are.
Everybody needs to be ready to go,
and that is the definition really of what professional really is. Because those who can do will thrive in that environment, and those who are challenged by it won't. So that's really been the change in the orchestra over the last 10, 15 years.
Is this the only thing? This sounds like a program to me. Is this the only? This is it.
2 hours.
2 hours. Okay.
Yeah. Again, when Bach was writing a mass, even when you get into the later period and the masses of Haydn and Mozart and Schubert, when composers wrote masses, it was intended for the liturgy. There would be sermons and intersperses.
This is the full service.
Right. But this is just to show you how this was really more of an artistic expression of Bach rather than something that was intended for actual practical use, because the music itself with intermission is about 2 hours. And maybe a little bit longer than that. It is impractical to put that in an actual physical service in and of its own right. So it is truly pure concert music of the highest spiritual nature.
Well, it sounds like a fitting capstone to what has been a fabulous season. As I think back over the last year and think of all the amazing musical moments that we've
Branford
had.
And
Branford
and oh my God, it's just been a spectacular season, and yeah.
So I don't know how you're going to top it next year.
But
it seems to me that you have some ideas.
Well, given the nature of this piece that we're about to perform this weekend, I will say it is a cross I'm willing to bear.
The concert is Epic Bach. It is coming up this weekend at the Paramount Theater. Just at the Paramount this?
No, it's doubled. Okay. So Saturday night at 7:30 at the Paramount, and then we repeat the performance at 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts.
Okay, so that's and of course moving this much show is
a lot of bodies to move on stage.
Logistical challenge as well. So but as you said, the not only the musicians but the crew and staff are equal to the task as well.
Yes. Everybody should realize that a performance, theatrical or musical, is not just about the people on stage. It's about the whole team that gets the music to the stage. The behind the scenes is equally as challenging as the actual process itself.
Well, it's as I said, a fitting capstone to a great season. Looking forward to it this weekend at the Paramount on Saturday and at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts on Sunday. And if people want tickets, they get them at
1-800-369-TUNE, or you can go online to artsiowa.com.
Tim Hankewich from Orchestra Iowa. Well, enjoy this concert that for you has been 28 years in the making.
Yes.
And I just hope that you just thrive on every second of something that obviously you've been wanting to do for a long time.
I am going to make sure I take time to savor the moment.
And then have a well-deserved break.
And to you, thank you so much.
Tim Hankewich from Orchestra Iowa.